Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Chris.
And I'm Chanel.
And my name is Leerin.
And today we're doing a series of workshops in partnership with the library for the new seed library bank that you can find here at the library. If you want to come and get some seeds and try them out at home, you can get some here for free. It's a community resource. And if you get any extra seeds, you can feel free to bring them by so we can start building a local seed library and bank here. Today, Leerin and Chanel are doing a workshop on seed saving and propagation. I'm with Fresno Metro Ministry, and they're doing a fellowship through Climate Action Corps, through the Climate Action Corps program. We oversee the Yovo Community Garden, which is just down the street here on California and Fruit. We partner with the library to do a seed bank. And so if you haven't taken a look already, after the workshop, you might want to take a look at the seed bank that we have back there. There are seeds that you can go and take home with you and plant. If you ever get any extra seeds from your plants and you want to donate them back, that way it becomes a resource for people to share seeds and for seeds to be acclimated to our climate here in the Central Valley. So that's available as a resource there for community members. The workshop that we have today is brought to you by Chanel and Leerin, who are our climate fellows. So they could join us from the Climate Fellowship Program. They're fellowing with us to learn about managing community gardens and building community networks, but they're also really knowledgeable. They're really cool plant people. So they thought this would be a great resource to share. So without further ado, this is Chanel and Leerin. They're going to open it up with our seed saving workshop.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, so thank you guys for coming. We really appreciate the time you're taking out to learn this valuable skill, because it's nice to be able to share this resource with other people once you've got a good little collection going. So today we're just going to be learning the basics of saving seeds and propagating.
And this was translated by Itzel and Chris De Leon himself. So some of the benefits of saving your seeds, you are able to preserve heritage and biodiversity. You gain control over your own food supply, which gives you stability and choices, and it's close by. You can preserve your preferred varietal characteristics. So if you like plump and juicy tomatoes, you can save the seeds from your juiciest and plumpest tomatoes. You can develop and preserve your cultivars adapted to your growing conditions. So you can save seeds from the ones that were more drought tolerant. It saves you money. You get to trade with others, and it's fun. It's a great hobby to take on.
We're just going to go through some definitions of some key terms. We have species, a group of living organisms consisting of similar individuals capable of exchanging genes or interbreeding. And then there's varieties, a taxonomic rank below species in botany. Varieties are usually the result of selective breeding and diverge from the parent species or subspecies in minor ways. And with hybrids, the offspring of two plants or animals of different species or varieties, such as a mule, a hybrid of a donkey, and a horse. And then we have plants that are true to type, plants whose seeds will yield the same type of plant as the original plant. Open pollinated plants, which include heirlooms, will almost always grow true to seed if another variety doesn't cross-pollinate them.
And these are just some extra things that we think that you should know and keep your eye on. Annual versus biennial. An annual plant has a 1-year life cycle until it will reproduce, and a biennial plant has a 2-year life cycle until it produces or reproduces. And then we have seed lifespans. Seeds do have different lifespans. They will eventually become non-viable. Some seeds can last thousands of years though, so that's pretty cool. And then there's cross-pollination. Pollination of a flower or plant with pollen from another flower or plant. Isolation distances. You should create distance between certain plants to maintain pure genetics and avoid cross-pollination. And then we have the plant population size for best genetics. It is important to save seeds from a diverse population of plants to maintain genetic integrity. And then that brings us to our first infographic. If Chris, if you could click on that. Sure.
So for biennials, is it that they have their full cycle every 2 years, or you have to plant them every 2 years?
So they live about 2 years, and then you
Okay.
collect the seed and do it again. A perennial is something that has like a longer lifespan.
Okay.
So here, if you could scroll just to the right, there we go, and scroll up a little bit. Yeah, just that top right corner. Here we can see some examples of different plants with details about the lifespan of their seeds. Some are much longer than others. The recommended population size for best genetics. So we can see the number of plants recommended for each kind there. So it is important to look these up per plant. So if you have a plant you're interested in, you really want to collect seeds from it and get your own genetics, it is important to pay attention to those things. As we can see here, the isolation distance needed for some plants can be as far as 1 mile. So if you have a neighbor down the street who also likes to garden, keep in mind that you may be more vulnerable to cross-pollination taking place in your garden. And that will bring us back to graphic number 2, please, Chris. And in this graphic, we're going to see how to break down the understanding of a seed catalog or a seed packet. So scroll down, there we go, click on it. Yeah, just click on it and then you'll scroll down a little bit on the website.
Oh, okay.
A little bit down there. There we go, just pause on the first one. So with open pollinated, they do grow true to type and can be saved and passed down. Hybrid F1, F2, commercial hybrid seeds are bred from 2+ parent stocks and combine the best characteristics of each strain. They are often faster growing and produce higher yields. The next generation seeds will not grow true to type, so gardeners have to buy new seeds every year. And then if we scroll down, we'll see a little bit about organic. The U.S. Department of Agriculture certified that these seeds are grown using organic methods, including integrated pest management, crop rotation, and non-synthetic fertilizers. And then if we scroll down to heirloom, choosing heirloom seeds preserves endangered food heritage traditions and encourages biodiversity in your food crops. Heirloom varieties are open pollinated, and seed savers usually pass down stories along with their seeds. Some companies can verify and document the generational history of their seeds going back more than 50 years. And that'll bring us to the next slide, please, Chris.
Yes, and then just a little bit more defining things here. He's focusing on genetics, and we have F1 hybrids. F1 hybrids, F1 generation refers to the first filial generation of offspring from the parents. The offspring of distinctly different parental types produce new uniform varieties with a combination of characteristics from the parents. Seeds will not grow true to type. Open pollinated. Oh, yeah.
Wait, so if they're F1 hybrids, does that mean like if you buy the seed and then grow it, if you collect the seeds from the plant that grows, like they won't produce?
It won't be true to type.
Yeah.
You'll
So
have
that
a
means
lot
it won't
of-
be like the same plant?
No, you'll have a lot of very weird varieties. You won't be able to predict what you'll get.
That's kind of like avocado, right? Because avocado does that. Like if you grow an avocado that you buy from the store, it may not be the same avocado
Yeah.
that you got it from?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Thanks.
And then we have open pollinated. Because there are no restrictions on the airflow of pollen between individuals, open pollinated plants are more genetically diverse. And heirlooms are cultivated varieties, not wild, that have been deliberately selected for their specific characteristics.
Anyone have any questions on this slide?
Is it better to use open pollinated versus like heirloom seeds? Or-
Actually, they're both great. Heirloom definitely has stories to be told and have, like it says here, been deliberately selected for specific characteristics already. Open pollinated just means that you can save the seeds and it will resemble the parent plants, but they will be diverse. So you can still cultivate certain genetics that you want in your next offspring. So you have an option. But with the hybrids, it doesn't grow true to type, or you have to take clones or propagation, which we'll get to that in a little bit. So just a little bit more about open pollinated and heirloom varieties. Choosing open pollinated varieties conserves the genetic diversity of garden vegetables and prevents the loss of unique varieties. As seeds saved from open pollinated varieties will breed true to type plants resembling the parent plant. Seeds saved from hybrids, again, will not grow true to type. They are able to adapt to climate change, specific landscapes like your own backyard, and different environmental conditions like severe drought, etc. Lots of rain, flooding. And the best thing about heirlooms and open pollinated is they are non-GMO, non-hybrid, and non-patented.
I have a lot of definitions for you guys. There's a lot of terms to get used to with these. Trust me, getting used to the terms makes it easier, because when you don't know what's going on, if you have a term, it directs you a little more with your research or collecting information from your friends. So we have how plants produce seed and reproduce. So bolting, plants that grow tall quickly and stop flowering as seeds develop. And then we have fruiting plants that go through the process of a tree or other plant producing fruit. There's bulbs and roots and other things that grow under the ground that you collect as seed type thing. Those are called geophytes. And the plants that form vegetative storage organs are characterized by a dual reproductive system in which vegetative and sexual propagation are tightly regulated to ensure survival in harsh climate conditions. And stolons, a creeping horizontal plant, stem, or runner that takes root at points along the length to form new plants. So we'll have some slides to show you guys like plants you're familiar with that fall under these categories.
So for bolting, we do have basil on the left. You could see the flower popping up. And if you could bring up those seeds right there. That's what it looks like when dried. And then in the middle, we have lettuce bolting. And then on the end, the right-hand side, is a picture of rhubarb. That big, muscly flower right in the middle is going to be a lot of seeds once it's dried.
And then we have stone fruits on this, the fruiting type are stone fruits, which are anything with a pit, so like peaches, apricots, nectarines, things like that. We have after that dragon fruit, and below it are acorns. Yes.
So bolting is a good thing when you're trying to collect seeds.
Yes. So in your garden, you might have, your plant population. You're going to harvest some, and you're going to let the others bolt that have the characteristics that you want out of that specific fruit or vegetable.
Bolting also does end the life cycle. So if you want things to continue growing, like basil, all through the season, pinch those flowers off.
Yes, so as soon as you see those flowers coming up on the basil, you can pluck all of them off, and it will actually make your basil last longer and get bushier, and you'll harvest more from it.
Those seeds aren't viable though, so you want them to fully dry out before you collect them.
And for this one, we do have some examples of bulbs and roots, what we call geophyte. On the left-hand side is potatoes. I'm sure we all love potatoes. I love my potatoes. And we got some ginger root up in the corner. I think it's a beautiful plant and very interesting how you could just break pieces off and plant some more. And then we have some flower bulbs here at the bottom.
And then for the stolons, we have mint, strawberry, and we have lemon balm. Have you guys ever noticed on strawberry, like have you guys seen any of these plants growing in real life? If you ever notice when you get into the dirt, there's like connecting vines to them, those are the stolons.
Yeah, they're called like runners. You could take that little end of a runner, and it usually has a little burst of leaves on the strawberry. You could take that and dig in the ground a little bit, and it'll plant a whole nother strawberry. So you just kind of, it's like connecting the dots. You can fill your whole garden with strawberries if you wanted.
Spider plants are a common house plant that do the same thing. Like you notice how they'll drop them and there'll be roots hanging off.
Yeah,
those
little babies.
Yeah, so.
Do tomatoes count
As a stolen?
No.
I don't think so. Not that we're aware of.
Yeah.
And then the next slide. So when to harvest your seeds and roots. Just before you prune your plants or turn the garden bed for the next season is usually the best time to harvest your seeds and roots. By this time, flowers will be dead and produce will be overly ripened, which is where you want your stuff when you're about to harvest your seeds. Dry seeds come in pods and seed heads, which are the flower. After the flower or pod has died and completely dried out, remove it from the plant. Wet seeds are found inside of fruits and vegetables, and roots would be after the first frost or just before. The leaves will start to die back, and this is a good indication of harvest time for your seedling potatoes and stuff like that.
Okay, and then these next two slides are just going to be different examples of how to find the seeds in different flowers and produce. So for dry seeds, you'll find them in peas and beans, things like lettuce, marigold, and calendula. So dry seeds come in pods, seed heads, or flowers. You want to let the seeds dry completely on the plant until they get brown and crispy, and that's when you know it's time to harvest the seeds off the plant or out of the pod and the seed heads. So just remember, if the seeds aren't completely dry, they will rot when you store them. And if a rain is coming and the seeds are near dry on the plant, you'll want to take them off, cut them off the plant, and store them in a brown paper bag. Or the pods, and allowing them to dry completely in that bag before you go to store them. And when saving seeds from a pod, just remove the seeds from the outer shell, and with seed heads, cut the flowers with scissors, and then collect the seeds and clear them of any husks or pods. And if the seeds grow out of the side of the plant, you can just like pinch or twist it off.
And we also have, what do we have here? We have okra too, to go along with our pictures on the next slide. Chris, please. So we do have an example of okra. It comes in a pod, and then we have calendula in the middle, which is a flower. You would wait for the flower heads to dry off, and then you can extract the seeds. And then we have cilantro here on the end, which another cool thing about plants like that is you could just let them die in place, and you could let the seeds fall. And next year it'll just start growing a whole bunch of cilantro again.
Is that okra?
That is okra, yes.
You pop them out, you just kind of take them off the husk. You want to open it, you'll see some of the little seeds in there.
I have a question about wet seeds. Tomatoes that I get from the store, the seeds are already sprouted
Oh, really?
inside the tomato.
Well, that's good. They're viable. You could replant those if you
can
wanted.
eat them.
Well, you could replant them. I don't know if you could eat them. I'm sure nothing bad would happen to you, but it's worth looking into first before you eat, But I would assume that it's safe. Yeah. It's just an overly ripe tomato.
Yeah, you want to, once they're ready to eat, some stuff's ready to go, but the more overripe it becomes, the better. So,
For seed saving, right?
yeah, for seed saving, and then letting it ripen on the sun as long as you can is better. But you can definitely harvest seeds from stuff you get out the
Yeah,
store.
because you want your seeds to be as mature as possible.
And so some examples we have would be like cucumbers, tomatoes, squash, melons.
And
So
peppers.
peppers. So like just about any type of produce. Yeah. And so it's important to wait, like we were saying, till the plant is completely ripe. Leaving it on the plant as long as possible is the better option.
Overly ripe would,
Yeah, overly
would be a
ripe.
better term,
Yeah.
especially for things like squash. Usually you pick those young because they're tender. With squash, you want them to be big and you want to be impressed by how ripe it is. You're going to show it off to all your neighbors, so it's going to be good.
Yeah, so with peppers, they need to be like really bright with no green. Cucumbers and zucchinis have to have like a leathery skin, like a winter squash. And yeah, just a good indicator on the tomatoes, like if they're like super squishy. So when you don't want to eat it, that's when you know it's a good time to harvest the seeds. Yeah. And then so just scoop out the insides of the tomatoes into like a fine mesh strainer. Like when I say fine, you want fine, not like a colander you'd strain pasta with. And you rinse away the pulp, and then place the seeds into a jar of water and let them sit for 2 to 5 days until the seeds settle to the bottom. And a few of them might stay on the top. After that, just kind of throw those out before you rinse the ones that sunk, because if they stay on the top, they're not good. They're not going to sprout. And just rinse them dry after you're done fermenting them, and let them air dry, fully dry so they don't rot, and then store them. But yeah, if you don't make sure they're completely dry, you will come back to your seeds and be sad because they will be moldy and you won't be able to use them. So yeah, and then fermentation is like, I mean, you could grow tomatoes without them, but the chances are really, really low. So it's almost required for tomatoes. And then it helps with stuff in the squash family, like also eggplants. The reason for this is it increases the germination rates and it kills some seed-borne pathogens. So yeah, and then with other things, you just want to cut like a melon or a squash, cucumber in half, and basically do the same thing you did with the tomatoes, but you could skip the fermenting part and just run it through the strainer, rinse it, and then let it dry out on the cabinet and fully dry.
And then,
So those are all things, like if you want to save the seed for later, right? Like if I want to save them for like next year and not necessarily plant them right now.
yes.
Or you
this
do have to do the
this is
same thing?
This is the way to wash, clean them, separate the pulp and all that, let them dry completely, and this is the process that you would do for storing them. This would also basically be the process if you're trying to extract your seeds. You do want to let them dry out a little bit and wash away that outer layer because it makes them more likely to sprout, more likely to pop. It increases their germination rates.
I'd say with it's almost necessary to at least let most wet seeds dry out. And I don't think you'd have to ferment tomatoes if you don't want to save them for later. But with the dry seeds, you don't have to fuss a whole lot. You just wait for it to dry out completely. Same with the dry seeds, like saving those, they have to be completely dry, but once you notice they're dry on the plant, like literally, there's a process you have to go through with this. Like we were popping the okra out, you know, but you could literally just put this whole pod in the ground. Well, for some of these once they're dry, so, you know, they don't have to be like 100% dry to store them. I just say drier, you know, because when you put them in the ground, they're a little too wet. They might mold, like in the ground, they might rot. So just semi-dry. If
Also,
you're
if
gonna do
they
it
aren't-
like soon.
If they aren't dry yet, it's probably not their season yet
Yeah.
because they're dying, and then you want to wait until the next proper season for them to grow. So they'll be dry by then, and then you'll pop them in the ground.
Yeah.
How long does it take seeds to dry? Is it that you're storing it and then it's continuing to dry?
No, we'll get a little bit more on like explaining like how we dry them, but you want to make sure like if you are going to put them away for the next season that they're 100% dry, because filling them on the plant, like even though that this looks dry, there's a chance that it's not dry, so we'll explain how you want to like put them away to make sure that some things dry out properly. So yeah.
Yeah, for storage, you want everything to be dry before you put an airtight lid on it, because it'll grow mold. And then we did have some examples of wet seeds on the next slide. So some wet seeds would be things like tomatoes, squash, and bell peppers, things that you do have to wash, clean, and dry. Unlike the dry seeds that are dry enough on the plant, usually you can store them. If not, you just cut them off so that they quickly die and air dry, and then you could store them away. And then the next slide.
Yeah, so we have what you can find. Geophytes are like and bulbs. They're gonna find them all underground. It's the seed equivalent to geophytes, the things that are underground. So we have roots, tubers, chromes, rhizomes, bulbs. These are the plants that have fleshy underground parts that originate from the roots and stems or leaf bases. So like these are rhizomes. These came off of alocasia plant, so it's like a elephant ear type. But yeah, this would be found like under. You dig under and it's attached to some of the main roots in the plant. And then this plant has rhizomes as well, but it doesn't make these. It kind of just shoots a new baby out the soil. So like, kind of like stones. This one's weird. I'm sorry. Plants are weird. So you get to know like these terms cross over, but yeah, it runs underground and then shoots up a new baby, but it just doesn't make another bulb that you take off and store for later.
Right.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
It does the work for you, if anything.
I'm sorry?
It does the work for you.
Yeah, it does the work for you. Yeah, this one, like, you have the option to save for later.
Right.
Yeah, but like that, I like that one. Like, there's babies in there already. Like,
Or like the Egyptian walking onion, it makes those bowls, but then it kind of throws them out from.
So cool. Yeah. One year I had an aloe and it sprouted, like after having it for so long, it sprouted babies, and like I had to take them apart and stuff, and had like the little aloe vera flower that comes out.
Yeah.
I think seeds. It was so cool.
So some of them, like garlic, will throw out a flower head with seeds, but you could pluck that and then it brings the energy of the plant back down to the bulb.
Right.
So it makes it bigger, juicier. You get to pull it up in a few weeks after that.
Right,
Or you
and
can save the seeds if you want, or you could break the head of the garlic and plant those cloves the next season.
that's what I mean by plants are weird. You'll notice like it's like language. Like there are rules to be broken. It's more like guidelines.
It's a soft science.
Yeah.
That's good. I need something.
And plants are forgiving, so just have fun with it, and get out there and do it, because you're never going to get the experience if you don't try.
And they want to live, so it's really hard to kill them.
Oh.
Honestly, I should have brought them, because while I was digging for this stuff, I found some like pieces of cactus I cut off while collecting these seeds months ago, and they're still alive and green, and they've been sitting in my closet since winter. So, yeah. See.
What was your question?
Will be considered a geofertilizer?
I think so, right?
That's a good question.
Like what would you call succulents? Because I know a lot of succulents act like that, and cacti. But they also produce seeds, so yeah. It's interesting, like just like the Egyptian walking onion, it could be a geophyte and it could also be a stolon, because it almost spreads itself like a strawberry plant. Yeah, next slide we have some pictures like the garlic. So you can see they have the sprouts off the fruit or the produce itself. And then you have your seedling tomatoes. You can see the sprouts coming off. Usually you could save your smaller potatoes, and those could be your seedling tomato or potatoes for next year. And then we have some daffodils, kind of get a feel of what flowers would look like.
Okay, so the This is the fun part, like actually collecting them. So yeah, the seed and root storage, like after you've gotten everything dried out and you're ready to like store it for next season or trade it with your friends, this is what you want to do. So like once you're 100% sure the seeds are dry, it's time to store them. You can use affordable storage options like Ziploc bags or envelopes. You can keep these organized in like food safe containers or glass jars. They could be stuff you reuse. I think there's like a seasoned blend in this one. Had some seeds in it after that. Yeah, just you want to make sure they're airtight. So like once you put them in the Ziplocs, you have them labeled. This is the long-term way you want to do it. Throw a bunch of Ziplocs in here, throw a bunch of envelopes in here. And yeah, and then when it comes to like the bulbs and the roots, you want to put them in like a brown paper bag, like a grocery bag like this, maybe a lunch bag, and just put some things in here. Like this is shredded paper. You can use like wood shavings or chunky sawdust.
Or straw.
Straw, yeah.
Ripped up newspaper.
Just something to help with the humidity control in there, you know. If you guys have ever bought bulbs from the store, you notice they come in a paper bag scenario with some fluff in them, so you want to kind of emulate that a little. And then just be sure to label everything, because you're going to want to know what you're planting when you come back to it, like the variety name and the year that you collected them. And you know, just make a little bio for your plants too. Maybe like put some notes on like the characteristics of the end result, like the produce you collected, the growing conditions it was in, so you know you can remember what part of the yard we're trying to get things to adapt to our climate. So if you noticed it was good over here and you never watered it, write that down. Never watered it and left it in the corner by the doghouse, you know, like. And then, you know, maybe put some of the characteristics of the parent plant. You know, just, it's all like genetics. You want to just make little notes so when you get the babies next season, it makes a little sense, and you can pair genetics like that too for the following seasons. And if you plan on keeping seeds for a long time, that's what this dry rice is in here for. You can use silica packs too. It helps with humidity control for the wet seeds, or basically any seeds. And keeping the seeds and bulbs in a cool, dry place will prolong their shelf life. And you can also freeze your seeds. You really want to make sure that they're airtight at that point, because
Double bag your seeds if you freeze them, but it'll extend your shelf life for your seeds. It'll extend their lifespan.
But yeah, just remember your freezer's got water in it, so if it gets in your seeds, they will mildew. Keeping the, like we said, if you don't have like a jar or something, those food saver bags that you use for meat, like that, you know, little machine.
Suck the
Sucks
life
a lot
out
of
of
the,
the
yeah, those work great if you want to throw seeds in the freezer, yeah. And
And then we have the next slide, please, Chris. We just have a little bit of things that you should probably look out for and keep in mind with your seed storage. I'm sorry, we have a question?
I have a question. How does the shelf life vary for like originally like wet seeds versus dry seeds?
So it depends on the plant. I recommend looking up each plant you're trying to learn about and keep seeds from. That way you can know the population size that you should probably have, how many years the lifespan usually is. Like Chanel mentioned, if you do freeze it, it will extend that life. There's always no guarantee, you know, stuff happens, maybe the seeds weren't viable, but it will extend the life of those seeds. So some of the things you should look out for and keep in mind is mold. Once seeds or bulbs have mold, they are no longer viable. Even if the seeds are completely dry, mold can still grow if they aren't stored correctly. if moisture is allowed to enter the storage container, mold will grow. So make sure your seeds are completely dry before storing them. And with pests, they are a big reason to have airtight containers. So remember, seeds are edible and they are very tasty for critters and crawlers. And some of the most popular pests you will see eating at your seeds are rodents, roaches, and weevils. So airtight jars, mason jars are really good. For germination, it is the successful sprouting of a seed. Your germination rate is the amount of successful seed sproutings. The older the seeds are, the lower their germination rate will be, and improper storage will also lower the germination rate. Proper labeling. With improper labeling, it is unfortunate because you won't know what you're planting until it sprouts. And if you want to trade your seeds, it could be confusing trying to find the seeds with an incorrect label. So knowing when the seeds were collected also helps with your successful germination rates.
I could live dangerously and not label any of them.
Right? It is fun. That's what's fun about seed saving. You have the seeds, you know how they're going to turn out, and you have the seeds that you have no idea what's going to happen, but we're going to do our best.
There's actually a little group of ladies and I that trade plants, and we're always like, there's always like this, you know, the missing sock in the laundry, like type of at the end of the seed saving thing, and we're like, so I have no idea what these are if anybody's feeling adventurous, so yeah, that's actually really fun. And you feel more successful when you grow it, knowing you knew nothing about it when you were growing it, so yeah. And some more definitions for you guys. Propagation and clones, taking the vegetative part, stems, roots, and leaves of the mother plant and allowing the cuttings to grow roots and become its own plant. This cutting will be genetically identical to the mother plant. With this method, success rates mostly depend on the type of plant and season. And then we have air layering, which is like getting to the mad science part of planting, which is fun. Air layering is like a method of propagation that forms roots for the clones on the mother plant. Using this method will produce genetically identical plants. Success rates will be higher regardless of the season. Yes.
So we have the next slide, please, Chris.
Okay, so it'll go more into detail?
Yes, this is the process for propagation and clones. You will start by cutting off a stem or a leaf from new growth, not old growth, new growth. When taking a leaf, trim as close to the stem as possible, adding rooting hormone if you wish. It's not, you don't have to, but it makes it a lot more likely that you'll grow roots out of this clone. Place the leaf in water or potting soil afterwards. With the stem, depending on the plant, remove some or all of the leaves. You don't want the plant spending its energy towards the leaves. You want it to spend it growing roots. So that's why you will cut down those leaves. The portion where the leaf was is called a node, as you can see in the picture. Depending on the, be sure to have 1 or 2 nodes in soil or water. So kind of like here that Chanel has, this is some propagation going on. So when there's a healthy root ball, you can add it to a pot with potting soil. You'll want to wait till the plant is established before planting it in ground or leaving in full sun. So you really want to make sure that root ball is healthy before you throw it out into the world. And if we could go to the next
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So, for example, you would like take off the top 2 leaves and then
Yes.
Yeah, when
cut it at the bottom of.
Yes, we are going to have a demonstration in a little bit. We'll show you exactly where to cut. Yeah. And all plants are different, so if you want a little more information on what you're doing with the specific plant, you could always go on Google or come to the library and get a little more information and specifics, because they might have some tips and tricks that we didn't share with you today.
Okay, so this is where I wish we could go a lot more in depth into stuff like this, because this is fun, but
There will definitely be more at the next workshop.
Yeah.
We'll do a short review of this, and then we'll really get into propagation and cuttings and planting from that.
yeah, but with this one, you're gonna wanna find a portion of the stem that's like really straight and about a year old. And then with like a sterile blade, you're gonna remove the first layer of bark and a 1-inch band around the branch, and then add some rooting hormone. And then you're gonna wanna like tightly pack sphagnum moss around, like moist sphagnum moss, not dripping wet, just moist. And put it in there. If it's too wet, it's gonna like make it rot. The chance of the rotting go up. But yeah, just all the exposed portion, wrap it with sphagnum moss, and then lightly wrap that moss with a plastic bag, a black plastic bag, and seal it with waterproof tape. And then check on it every now and then, just to make sure it's not rotting. And then depending on the variety of plant, you're gonna leave it there for several months to a year to let it form a root ball. And then when there's a healthy root ball, you're gonna cut just below the stem, like right underneath that root ball, and add it to a pot with potting soil. And then the same with any other cutting, just kind of baby it for a little bit until it gets established. Don't put it in full sun. Don't throw it out with its parents yet. Still needs to stay in the nursery.
So that's why it's kind of like a mad scientist thing. I think it's really cool to grow roots on a mother plant in the middle of it. Just like, oh yeah, we're growing a whole nother tree on top of a tree.
Yeah, once you get this down, it's almost fail proof. Like, I honestly haven't done this yet, but I've been doing a lot of research, and the gurus are like, once I crack this, there's no going back to propagating in those little jars. So
I tried to do that with roses, because you know how like roses get really big and you have to cut them back.
Yeah.
And my mom wanted some roses, so I was like, oh, maybe I can make a bunch more roses and then cut them. And I saw like many different ways that people were like cutting into it and then putting like I just had put like potting soil around it and then like plastic thing, but it didn't quite work. I did like 8 of them, and I think 1 of them worked. I think it's because it got really dry.
Yeah, that might happen. You really want to make sure it's moist and then airtight.
Oh, okay.
Like no water's getting in or out. So it does that like greenhouse effect with the plastic bag. And yeah, that might have been something that went wrong. Or like this, you really want to make sure it's sterile. You don't want any pathogens getting in there because it'll just rot, kill it, make it sick.
it's an open wound. I mean, you want to get cut with a clean knife, so
And, you know, just
so does the plant.
And you don't really want, like, if it's a plant you really care about and you only have 1 of it, I wouldn't suggest trying it for your first time on that one. But you know, if you got some extras, play around with it. It's really fun what you can do with propagation and cloning and all of that.
And this method is more for things that grow a bark. So like tree type things. You wouldn't go do this to a mint plant, you know.
Alright, so we do have some suggestions on tools. For harvesting, you'll want a basket or a bag to collect your fruit, flowers, or bulbs, a small shovel to dig up your bulbs, and pruners to cut off the flower heads. For storage, you can use envelopes or Ziploc bags to separate your seeds, brown lunch bags and wood shavings to separate your bulbs, a permanent marker for labeling, airtight containers for longer shelf life and organization, and silica pads for moisture control. And then for cleaning, we have a bowl to separate your flower heads, a fine mesh strainer, like Chanel pointed out earlier, to rinse the pulp from wet seeds. And while you're cleaning, you can kind of gently massage against the mesh. That kind of helps get off all of that fleshiness off and away from your seed. And then plates lined with a paper towel for seeds to air dry, and clean water for rinsing and fermenting, like your tomato seeds in the jar. And then if we could go to the next slide, please, Chris.
Okay, and then we have affordable tool alternatives. So honestly, with this, you can get endless. You can become the MacGyver of the garden if you wanted to. You can use scissors, knives, and razor blades instead of like fancy clippers and pruners to harvest your flower heads. And then using like a paper grocery bag that you already would have gotten instead of go out to buy those lunch bags. Chunky sawdust, maybe if you're doing woodworking projects, it's already at your house. Shredded paper, we all could shred up paper. Straw, maybe, if you have other projects that involve straw, maybe some animals that need it.
Yeah, don't cancel your newspaper subscription. Even if you
Yeah.
don't read it, you can use it for so many things.
Yes. And yeah, and those would help in place of maybe shredded wood flakes that you could purchase. I mean, those would be the best option if you wanted to save your bulbs forever, but you gotta burn them. So yeah, these are good alternatives. And then we have like recycled airtight jars, like I said, like an old pickle jar or something. I don't know, this came from a
Any
gift
glass jar with a
basket,
lid.
I don't know, but there's a seal on it, so seeds. Yeah, so, and then we could use like silica packs or like the uncooked rice. And then instead of like the strainer, you could honestly use a t-shirt, like put it in a shirt, just zhuzh it up and rinse it and replace the water, zhuzh it up. And then, yeah, recycled cups, I don't know, like any cup you've already used, you don't have to use special cups for this. And then you could use for the fermenting, and then to dry out the seeds, if you don't like to invest in things like paper towels, honestly I don't, because I like trees alive instead of as paper towels. But you could use, again, maybe an old piece of clothing you're gonna throw away, chop it up, a tea towel, anything like that. You could fold newspapers, maybe some of these brown paper bags to make envelopes, you know, some little staple, little tape. And then you could use things like, I don't know, old yogurt containers, or 2-gallon plastic, or 2-liter plastic soda bottles, maybe like milk cartons, and cut them in half and use them as flower pots. Yeah, just honestly, you can get creative, and anything that you would have thrown away that has the potential to be recycled goes great in a garden.
Yes, gardening will turn you into a hoarder, just a little bit.
Operation Cleanup. I haven't looked at it the same since I've gardened. Trust.
How dare you throw that away?
Yeah.
How you dare.
I already have a problem, so it seems like I found my perfect.
Well, hey, you know, now you're going to be able to use some of the stuff
Yeah.
you've already saved.
You're like, thanks, neighbor, for throwing that out. You
Yeah.
saved me from backwards. I love this.
Everything's a flower pot.
Yes.
Even an old shoe.
Especially if you get good with a paint can, you can be like, I mean a spray can, you can be like, hey, this is no longer trash. This is my art, and I'm putting my babies in it. So.
Upcycled it.
Yeah.
Okay. We do have some books here to check out at your library, and some of the good ones were The New Seed Starter's Handbook by Nancy Bell, Seed Sowing and Saving Step-by-Step Techniques for Collecting and Growing More Than 100 Vegetables, Flowers, and Herbs by Carol B. Turner. And we have The Heirloom Life Gardener, The Baker Creek Way by Jer Gettle. And we have Heirloom Vegetable Gardening, A Master Gardener's Guide to Planting, Seed Saving, and Cultural History by William Boyes Weaver. And last but not least, we have Propagation Basics by Stephen Bradley. And we have some of them on display courtesy of your local librarian to show off what they have in store for you
You can
guys.
check them out today.
Yes. Let the experts educate you way further than we can. That would be amazing if you guys continue your education.
Yeah.
And then next slide, we have our sources in case you'd like to find out a little bit more. And thank you guys for coming. If you have any more questions, please let us know, and come feel free to take a look up here. Oh, and Chanel, would you like to give a demonstration on a cutting?
Yeah, okay, so, can you guys all see this pretty good?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, here we have like, obviously a bunch of different plants. I brought this one because this was the most like diverse bowl of cuttings I have, just to show you guys different forms of nodes, so you know how to identify them on different plants. I like plants like this. This guy is awesome because he tells you where they're at. Like, some plants are really out there, like these little bumpy things are nodes. You could take a bushy plant, cut them off, throw them in soil, damp soil or water. Some are a little bit more inconspicuous. Honestly, this guy doesn't really even care about a node, if you can tell. He's growing out of, this one you see is only growing out of those points. This one's growing just about everywhere, but you really want to make sure that wherever a leaf is coming out of is getting contact with soil or water.
Chanel, when you take a cutting from new growth, about how long should it be? Does that matter, or is it depending
Honestly, it just
on each
depends
plant?
on how successful you want to be. Like with some plants, it does matter. Like with
I know woody ones, you eat, like if you're taking a cutting off a
Yeah.
tree, you want it to be like
yeah,
12
if you're taking
inches.
like, say you're taking like a grape or something, or like a berry like vine, you're gonna want like, I'd say like 6 inches of that plant.
Because once you start getting too big, then it's not going to
Yeah, it's
focus
not
on
gonna-
root building. It's going to focus on trying to keep the rest of that plant alive. So
Yeah.
there's a sweet spot. You don't want it to be too tiny to where it keels over and dies, and you don't want it too big to where it's suffering and can't do what it needs to do.
Yeah. Like I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with these are the ones you see in restaurants all the time.
Right.
The pothos. Everybody's friend has one like draped through their house somewhere. But like you could get one of those long pieces and maybe get like 4 or 5 nodes under the water. There's a chance that whole thing will survive, but like she said, the chance is lower. If you start going for 1 or 2, actually, I'm sure when this started, it was just 1 or 2, and this is all grown in the water. But generally, you want to do this. This is the This is like the surefire. You're not gonna mess up if you take 1 node from a plant of this type of variety. But then there's just some guys that are just so vigorous that you can't kill them. You just take a piece off and you throw it in the dirt and you forget about it and you come back and yeah. So
I'd pick the easy plants so you get confidence real quick.
Like that one.
Yeah.
pothos is really easy.
That was
yes.
my first starter plant too.
Yes,
Builds your
pothos, you
confidence.
really can't go wrong. If you have a fish tank, throw it in there too. You'll learn
Figs?
that fish tanks have a really close symbiotic relationship with your house plants.
Figs are also one of the easiest woody tree plants to propagate, so that's another like fail-proof one that will give you some quick confidence when you first start out. Did you have a question? Oh, I'm sorry.
I didn't quite catch, which one, what you just said right
Oh,
now?
a fig.
A fig?
Yeah, like
Oh, a
figs,
fig.
like fig Newtons.
A fig.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like the black mission figs, the
fig.
fig garden. Yeah. You can propagate those all day, every day.
Wow.
Yes.
I got a volunteer one in my front yard.
Oh,
Big
yep,
rock.
see? Yep, there you go.
Usually I'll buy like little baby plants and start from there because I was afraid to try the seeds because they looked harder. I think it's easier to do the baby ones or is it, because I'm just starting like.
Which plant was it?
She's asking
I've done a lot of-
if buying a
Like-
sprouted plant is
Oh, okay, buying a
better than
teen
getting-
is better than seed. When you're first starting to garden, to get that confidence up real quick, I would probably start with a teen, buying like a already established little plant from a store versus popping in seeds. Because if you direct sow into the ground, you know, birds can come and get it too. It's much better if you start your seedlings off in a tray in like a greenhouse setting or inside where it stays a consistent temperature, like in a window. So that's an easier way to get them a little more established before you go transplant.
Yes, I tried throwing stuff in the ground when I first started with plants.
And is it just
And
like
it
depending
just-
on what
yeah.
kind of plant it is? Because I have some stuff growing on my kitchen window right now. But
Yes,
it's
things-
doing really well and I'm afraid to put it outside.
What are they?
I got some blue agave plains. They're
Oh,
succulent.
Oh, those little,
yeah, any
Those
kind
would
of
be good with
agave or
Fresno.
aloe, I'd put them outside. They don't
Just make
care.
sure-
Oh, I can put them out?
yeah, make
Yeah.
sure it's well-drained soil and they get at least like 6 to 8 hours of sunlight.
That was the
Oh,
first
okay.
airport
Yeah, okay.
experience.
They don't like to be in a boggy, wet situation.
Okay.
Agaves and aloes are very hardy.
And afterwards, before you guys leave, if you'd like to come take a look at some of the other seeds and touch and feel and ask more questions, you're more than welcome to.
And if you guys want, I can chop up this plant so you guys can see how that goes down.
The 7th, March 7th.
And if you don't have a library card, you can apply a library card today. You can request the books from other branch to pick up at your closest branch.
What do we put at the top?
For the question number 1, what person or agency did you see? Should we put Fresno Metro?
Yeah, either one. Yeah.
Yeah, just put Fresno Metro for that one.
Fresno Metro.
Yes, Fresno Metro.
There's the tiniest little propagated plant I've ever seen.
Tiny.
His roots are right, though. But I thought roots could be ready. I like this one because I can put up some.
Done?
This was a workshop in partnership with the library and with the seed bank that we have here. So right in that little area where it says job and career, there is a seed bank. And so basically you can go there and take some seeds home and plant them. So it's like a shared seed space. And then when you're at home and you grow seeds, if you harvest seeds, you can bring them there, and we'll repackage them back into little envelopes for people to retake again. That way we have like a shared resource of seeds that are all like accustomed to our climate here, right? And so it'll make them more resilient, it'll make them more drought tolerant, and then it'll also make seeds more like free and more available. Yeah, so feel free to check that out before you leave. Take some seeds home for the spring.